Hello and welcome to the podcast, Eye of the Beholder. I am your host, Dulce Crystal Ortiz. I am a certified clinical hypnotherapist, and in this week's episode, we're going to be going into the subject, delving into soul contracts. Now, the interesting thing about soul contracts is that it's something that I came into learning about doing this kind of work and delving into doing also these kinds of holistic practices and therapies on myself as well. So I was able to go into the subject of soul contracts because they are quite fascinating. It's the idea of that the soul itself, all the things that we have been able to experience in whichever lifetime has been something that has already been decided before we came down into the physical form. Now, when we think about soul contracts, a lot of the time we don't take into account how everyone that we ever meet, every experience that we do have, it's one that has already been decided upon. And a lot of people would argue in that how could oneself, truly decide to go through an experience that may be a little bit intense, traumatic, that could cause great pain. Here's the thing though. If every day we make decisions, little decisions that affect our life, the decisions that we make on a daily basis are small, minute, right? Compared to the greater role of our life. But if we actively make decisions knowing that they're not the best decision to make, even though they're tiny little ones, wouldn't it make sense that we would also decide to go through experiences on a grander scale that would cause for us to change our viewpoint or to experience something where we change our perspective of ourselves and also the world around us? So when I delve into this subject or into the subject of the soul and the metaphysical and things of that nature, I came to find that it was pretty interesting how a lot of the times the things that cause us the most greatest pain and cause the most change within us, a lot of the times they could be considered negative experiences. But as I like to explain a lot of the times, it's that an experience in itself, every experience, it is a neutral experience at the core. And the only reason that it either is negative or positive, it's depending on oneself of their perspective of that experience. So experiences are neutral, and depending on whether we give it that positive or that negative nuance, it changes. It's the way it's viewed. So if we were to look at soul contracts, a lot of the times it's fascinating because if our souls already knew what it was that we were going to be doing, who we were going to meet, maybe some people would argue and say, like, why would I ever decide or choose to actively decide to meet someone that caused me the most pain or that didn't care for me or love me the way that I wanted to? And the answer to that is that the soul is experiencing what it's like to have that desire and not have it fulfilled, if that makes any sense. If the soul has no human consciousness attached to it, then the soul in itself is living a neutral life. The only reason that a soul or a person even feels a positive or negative reaction is because of the human consciousness of being a living being on this earth. So it's actually an interesting topic because I am going a little bit also off of the readings that I had for a great hypnotherapist who also got a lot of her research and a lot of her case studies from being a hypnotherapist, and her name is Dolores Cannon. So I do recommend, if this is like a subject that you want to go into, sort of like looking into maybe the universe, the cosmos, souls, and past lives, things of that nature, then I do recommend looking into Dolores Cannon and her work. The information that she has, it truly is incredible, because it really shows the connection between what is oneself and also community and the universe as a whole. From Dolores Cannon, the book of The Three Wave of Volunteers and the New Earth. That kind of gives us a little bit of a map, or sort of some nuance into why things are going on as they are now in this time period. So, soul contracts. The most intense relationships that we can ever experience in our lives do a lot of soul searching, as I call it, right? And those relationships, typically a lot of the time, they do cause a lot of pain, a lot of emotional hurt and torment. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, it does feel that way at the start, but the more that you dig, the further you dig into yourself, into what it is that you've been holding back or you've been ignoring, the more you bring to light what has been hidden for a long period of time, you will find that you'll have a lot of peace after you've given attention to those parts of yourself that you typically might not want to look at. And a lot of the time, it's often perceived that when we live our lives, we are alone. But the relationships we have with others, it's sort of like a mirror, if you think about it. Depending on what level of frequency you are, it's, like attracts like. What program you're running on, a lot of the times you're going to attract someone else that will complement that program. So let's say if you are someone who is in a victim mentality, which is a very low frequency, low vibrational energy to be in, it will attract a lot of people that will place you in that victim mentality. So a good example would be, let's say you're someone who always perceives yourself with low self-confidence, low self-esteem. You surround yourself with others who also have that same mentality, but what they will do is that they will sort of cement the idea of what you have for yourself. So let's say you have friends who you believe, looking at them, that they have a higher self-esteem, self-worth, but they have it low as well. But the way in which they move around the world is that they bring others down to make themselves feel bigger or better in a way. And you're someone who also has that same programming, right? Not having self-worth, not having self-esteem, and you stay around these people. They end up putting you down, cementing what it is that you already believe of yourself, even though it's not true. Again, this is just a program that is in your subconscious. And you cement also what it is that you're sensing and you're feeling of yourself through the actions of the people that you surround yourself with. Because one thing that we do have, fortunately, is the ability to have the option of free will. We have the ability to allow many people around us to take up space, take up our energy if we so choose. And a lot of the times, our souls, before they came down into earth, they decided to go into contracts with one another, with either our parents, who were going to be the ones to create us and bring us into this world, siblings if we have any, other family members, friends. We have decided to have those people to meet with them once we came down into the physical realm. How could it be true in every situation? But the thing is, if I were to tell you that it is true, what kind of feelings would come up for you? And just give ourselves a moment to really look towards those things that need our attention. One good exercise to do sort of like on a daily basis to give yourself more insight, because no one is going to know you as you know yourself. And the thing is, if you are a stranger to yourself, then how could we expect anyone else to know who we truly are if we don't know who we are? And that's sort of like the give and take, right, of ourselves in our relationships and how we should like move through this world. So when it comes to, let's say, parental figures, this is typically the first very intense relationship that will actually form, if you think about it, it will actually form the way in which we perceive ourselves as adults and how we view the world. The subconscious mind does not understand the concept of sarcasm. It is sort of like a four-year-old child in that it doesn't understand what sarcasm is, and it takes everything as truth. And that is the part of the mind that never grows up. That's sort of what you would call like the child within, the inner child. That's the part of our mind that will never grow up, and it will always be there, always being sort of innocent in a way. And because of experiences, because of life, we begin to build up barriers and walls to sort of, self-preservation to keep us safe. And typically, because a 4-year-old wants to do its best to keep one safe, it doesn't always know the best course of action, if that makes sense. So a lot of the times it will create a lot of the inner child again. It will create a lot of barriers and a lot of blocks that will keep us safe, but in the long run, it may cause us more damage than good, because it's stopping us from being able to fully exist or to fully experience life, if that makes sense. So when we are young, we are forming our analytical part of our mind, which is not fully formed until we're about seven years old. So if you are speaking to a child that is below the age of 7, typically anything that you say to them, it will be known as truth to them. For that reason, because our mind physically has not created that part yet. A lot of things that can influence us still heavily is long before we even fully form our mind. So as a child, the relationships that we typically have with our parental figures, our parents, because a lot of the times they aren't biological, but again, we search for that as children, right? We search for who that parental figure is. If you're fortunate enough to have had it with biological parents or even non-biological parents, some people weren't able to have even that parental figure formed. So that would cause a lot of self-esteem issues once they grow older. And I mean, typically that's correlated. It doesn't mean that it's always the case. They can become very strenuous over time because, again, when we are children, we form our viewpoint of how we see ourselves through their eyes. So the soul has already chosen to have these people be the ones to sort of form our perception of ourselves from a young age. And that's why whenever we do any kind of therapy, any kind of work, a lot of the time we will bring up instances of the past of these relationships typically as well. I mean, if you think about it, that is one of the most intense relationships to have, because you saw these people as a certain way when you're little, and then over time, because your mind is changing and morphing, a lot of the times our parents aren't capable of fulfilling a lot of the desires that we have to be cared for or listened to or seen the way that we wish to be seen. Even, parents do the best that they can. Let's talk about a situation where parents actively tried to do the best that they can, but because of their own relationships, their own traumas, they weren't able to care for us as we would have liked to individually. And that would begin to morph and shape these programs that in turn would bring us down once we, become adults. A lot of the times that's what will eat us up inside, and that will spill over into all of our other relationships, our friendships, our romantic relationships, and even friendships. And again, it's because we're searching for someone to be able to fulfill that part that we needed as a child that wasn't fulfilled fully. Whenever our own internal system is showing some kind of form of pain or hurt or sadness or any kind of negative feeling, typically, it's because it needs attention. It wants that attention. And ignoring it doesn't make it better. If anything, it compounds it and it makes it stronger and more intense to the point where it may end up actually hurting others. It may push oneself to make a rash decision which would cause pain to someone else. So looking inwards and really looking at the relationship that you've had with your parents, that is probably one of the most biggest factors that will help you to be able to release and to let go and to heal and to be able to move on and to create something new and something different for yourself. Another thing to also look into is the act of forgiveness. These soul contracts that we have, it's okay to forgive the ones that caused you the most pain, the most suffering, because looking at it on a soul level, looking at each experience from a neutral place, it's okay to see that each person had a role to play and they played their part. And whenever anyone does any kind of forgiveness, any kind of therapy, you do it not because you're giving it to someone else, but you're giving it to yourself. The freedom to be able to let go of the damage that someone else has done. You give yourself the freedom to be able to move on and to keep going and to keep on experiencing. And you don't have to be tied and chained to a program or to an experience that was done in the past. So looking into soul contracts now in a romantic nature, these relationships are typically also very, very intense, because it has to do with being loved and being cared for. And after being raised by parents, now we desire to have that as we grow, to feel desired by others, to be wanted, to be cared for, to be cherished. And a lot of the times, the relationships that we actively go into and we pursue, depending on what frequency we're on, depending on the therapy we've done, the healing we've done, a lot of the times we will seek out partners that will mirror to us what it is that we're lacking. That's why that whole idea of, how can you find love with someone else if you don't have it with yourself? So looking at those kinds of relationships, looking at our romantic relationships, the partners that we choose to be in a relationship with, we should be actively trying our best to weed out the ones that aren't worth our time and effort because of experience and trauma and lack of self-worth, self-purpose that we may have. It typically causes us to seek out partners that a lot of the time we want to have them fulfill our needs, and what we're lacking, but that's not how it works, right? That's not how really good, true, loving relationships work. We have to first work on ourselves and do our best to try to be able to find out what it is that we can do for ourselves. And a lot of the time it can seem hard, it can seem difficult, but if we really think about it, it has to do with oneself. Where is it that we stand? How much do we actually love ourselves? Are we actually being present for ourselves? Are we showing up for ourselves? And whatever it is that we desire and we want, are we caring for ourselves as we should? And typically, if you are someone who actively pursues, working on yourself and trying to be the best version of yourself without finding a partner that will try to fulfill those needs for you, then a lot of the times you will end up finding partners that will come in and will sort of pull out the parts of you that you maybe were trying to hide or suppress. So here's the thing. With soul contracts, each soul has their purpose and their reason and how they move through life, right? Even though if you're someone who does a lot of work on yourself, you do a great job at actively becoming better and healing. A lot of the times, the relationships that come in for you, I'm sorry to say, will be ones that will teach you more about yourself. Who you are as an individual, it's completely different from who you are as a partner. So that's where when a partner comes in, if you have a steady base of yourself, of who you are as a person, and you set your boundaries as a person, as an individual, that's a great start. But then when you get into that romantic relationship with a partner, then everything has to be rewired in a way to where you're both actively trying to pursue to be in a good relationship where you're both being fulfilled. A lot of the time, these romantic ones are very interesting because that's where you can find a lot of past, like what they call soulmates, right? And the concept of a soulmate, it doesn't exactly have to be romantic. It could be like family members, it could be with best friends, it could be with, a parent-child. A soulmate is just a soul that you have already sort of encountered in another lifetime, right? It doesn't have to be romantic. And the thing is, when we get into a romantic relationship, I've come to find that a lot of the times they will be linked to other lifetimes. A lot of the times I've had clients who have met this romantic partner in other lifetimes and they come into this lifetime together. And it's because there's something that they're still needing to sort of work out, being together. So the next soul contracts that I want to look into as well, I would say, is that of family members. Because family members, a lot of the times, a lot of the karmic lessons that we have to learn, I would say they are associated with the people that we share blood with, our bloodline, our family. When it comes to our family, it is believed that we don't have a choice in the family we come into. But I could argue that on a soul level, our soul contracts that were made up before we came into this physical realm, everyone chose to come into this lifetime the way we did. We chose these people that are in our family to be our siblings, to be our cousins, to be our grandparents, to be whatever member they are. We chose that. And again, they also chose us. So on a soul level, we are choosing each other. But I do know that depending on level of your healing journey, it could be a hard concept to grasp that, like, how is it that I could choose to have this person as a family member when, they may have caused me a lot of harm or damage? And that's the thing. Once we're able to accept on a soul level that things that have been done because our soul gave the consent for it, we can sort of take back control or power for ourselves. Because there is a difference between saying, I had no choice, and saying, I had a choice. I chose this. I chose to learn and to accept the lesson that was taught. But I also choose to let it go once it's done. So there is a difference there. I bring up the subject because I do know from personal experience and from all the clients I've had, I do find that these contracts that we have, I like the idea of how our soul knew from the very beginning, from before even consciousness was made, that we would all find each other and we would agree to live these experiences together. And it's beautiful because it's like these people were able to show a part of yourself that you didn't know that you may have been able to experience or to even look at if this person didn't take it out, didn't pull it out from you. But a lot of the time, like it's said, growing pains, there's a reason why that's a term. Whenever we're growing, we're healing, we're expanding, we're changing. Like when we're children, we're born into these tiny little bodies. We go through pain on a cellular level to grow, to change, to form ourselves into these full-bodied adults. So if at a soul level, we're able to accept that, yes, even the pains that we went through, we can say that we chose it, but we did what we needed to do, and now it's done, then you've learned and you've grown. You don't need to be chained to a past or a situation or a person anymore that has no control over you. Again, we have the option of free will. We have the option to be able to do what we please when we please. Like, we get to choose how we feel. We get to choose what we see, what we allow into our energetic fields. And I think a lot of the times it's like we've forgotten that part of ourselves. So again, I bring up this subject of soul contracts because I kind of want to bring to light the idea that we have the choice to not be a victim. We have the choice to get out of those low frequency, low vibrational energies, and we can let go of what it is that we don't need anymore, what doesn't serve us anymore. Remember, everything and anything has a purpose, and it doesn't have to be a large, grand thing. It could be a small, minuscule thing. But at the end of the day, every single moment, it is precious, and it is something that we should be giving our attention to. Every single part of ourselves that we typically try to ignore, those are the parts that need the most attention, and those are the parts of us that are sort of like wailing, crying to get that attention. Because in the grand tapestry of life, like, how can you see every single tiny thread, right? You can't really see them, but they're there. And they all come together to create this wonderful, beautiful design. So with that, I do want to thank you for joining me on this week's episode. If you yourself would like to experience a hypnotherapy session with myself, then feel free to click on the website that I have down below. I will have it linked. If you would like to help out the channel, I do have a Patreon that it's really fun because we do a group hypnotherapy session on there. If you feel like you wouldn't want to do one-on-one, then I do perform group hypnotherapy sessions on Patreon every week. So that is a fun membership to be a part of, and it also helps out this channel and helping people to be able to achieve full happiness and recognition. And the main motto I have is that helping the soul to remember what it believes it has forgotten. And all of the answers that we hold is within us. So what I'm doing is just helping to guide you back to what your soul wants to remember. And everything is always done on your soul's time. Each one of us has a purpose and a reason, and we are all important. So I do thank you for being with me today, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.